This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1887, Comic Talk. Welcome to Comic Geek Speak. I'm Ian Levestein.
I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Shane Kelly.
And I'm Chris Eberly.
Comic Geek Speak! All right. Welcome one and all to the show. And joining us for the first time in way too frickin' long. He used to be affectionately known as Dr. Norge on the old Comic Geek Speak forums, and he's still that to us, Mr. Sean Whelan of Raging Bullets. Sean, welcome back to Comic Geek Speak.
I'm wondering where the affection went.
The affection never left. It's
honestly, you mentioned the forums, and it's a privilege and an honor to be here because what got me into podcasting was Comic Geek Speak. So it's just, to come here and have the opportunity to talk with you guys is just truly an honor for me. So thank you for having me.
It's been way too long. My goodness.
Absolutely. And I think, you and I probably started listening to CGS probably around the same time, now that I think about it, Sean, because it was pretty close there on the numbers, more than likely.
Yeah, it was an episodes of Geek Speak that got me really jonesing into podcasting, which all came from the fact that we just found this love for podcasting through Comic Geek Speak. And to this day, it still exists. Just having a blast thanks to all of you. So it's a pleasure to be here today.
Our pleasure to have you. And you know what? I think before we even get everything going, since it's been long enough, I don't know if you ever did tell your origin story on the podcast. How did you first get into comics?
Wow. It was so I was a child of the 70s. I was born in 71. It was really due to the Batman 66 show and the Spider-Man show, the Spider-Man animated series, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Spider-Man. That was really what drew me in and just made me so into both of those characters. From that, breaking into comics through reading Batman comics anywhere I can grab them, and Spider-Man comics. Marvel Team Up was a biggie for me growing up because that was a series where you could just get to know Spider-Man, which was my gateway, and so many other great characters. And, Brave and the Bold obviously did the same thing with the DC universe and just increased my love for both universes. And since then, I've been a sponge for comics. Now, my budget hasn't always agreed with that, but
I feel your pain there.
You and everybody on this call. Awesome. Yep. Well, once again, happy to have you here. And before we get into the full thick of it, Mr. Murdo, a reminder of what's upcoming here for the Best of Comic Geek Speak Awards.
Absolutely. Yes, the nomination currently open for our Best of Awards. So if you'd like to pay homage in ballot form to those comics and creators that entertained you most in 2022, go to the supergroup, the Comic Geek Speak supergroup on Facebook, or to the old forum site. You will find a list of the categories in which we're seeking nominees and the rules for submission, and just put together a ballot and email it to bestof, BESTOF, at comicgeekspeak.com. By Sunday, March 5th, if you would like to participate in that process.
Indeed, by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And please make sure to email your ballots. You can post them on the supergroup and the forums if you'd like to share your answers with everybody. But do email those ballots, as that is how Murd will be tallying.
Right. If it doesn't show up in that inbox, it's not going to be counted.
Don't mess with Murd's rules. Don't mess with them.
Very, very, very big stickler to the rules, okay?
Most of them were written by the Rios, and they still work today.
Yep. Damn Skippy. And we're not going to reread all of those many different categories. You could head to the forums or the supergroup or the YouTube for that matter. I put it on the YouTube community page for youtube.com/Comic Geek Speak. It's on there as well. So many different places you can find them. Do check that out. And also just a quick reminder to thank everybody there for being patrons of the show over at patreon.com/Comic Geek Speak over the years. We really do appreciate it. For as little as $1 a month, you can join in and occasionally get some, behind the scenes stuff and early postings and stuff like that. But we really do appreciate anything that you could throw our way. It makes things that much easier for us to keep things running. And we thank you so much for that continued support over at patreon.com/Comic Geek Speak. All right, let's get into the thick of it. And one of the main reasons why we have Sean on this episode is for a specific bit of news that broke not too long ago. And that, of course, is DC's brand spanking new movie slate, which it was a lot. It was a lot more than I thought was going to be announced, to say the least. TVs, movies, all over the place on things to be upcoming in the next couple of years. I mean, Sean, I know you have varied opinions on the movies that have come before. But I mean, what's your stance on DC movies as we are today in 2023? Like where we are now, and what's come before.
Well, I think there's a difference between like your diehard fans and appealing to them and appealing to a larger audience. I think Marvel, one of the things that Marvel's doing really well is they've nailed how to appeal to a larger audience of fans.
Yeah.
I think on the DC end, I think the messaging's been very confusing. And I don't say that as I've enjoyed the movies. I'm always eager to go out to the movies. It's great to have that theater experience, but when I'm at a movie theater, I do notice when I'm at a DC movie, there's less people that are there. And I think that's really more of what my worry is.
Yeah.
It's, we need the movies to do well in order to get more diverse choices that are out there. So I think that's something and it's been to varying degrees. Like going to the Batman, for example, was different than even Black Adam.
Yeah.
Which that one kind of surprised me that I thought that would be a one that would draw people out a little bit more. And not the same experience. Whereas the Batman, it was a packed crowd, and it was that experience that you get like, okay, I'm part of something exciting. And I'm talking about the opening night. I think that opening night experience is really a tell-all for our crowd, right? That's what draws people out. So that's been more the piece versus quality. I've been having fun. I mean, I think across comics, I think we've gotten just a great batch of movies that are out there that even if there's something you didn't like, the nice part is there's so many great things on the horizon that we're lucky that we've got this smorgasbord of choice now that we never had. But I think that also is a double-edged sword if your messaging isn't right. So I think that's been the bigger worry of mine has been, the DC films, I think, have had just a different messaging about them.
Yeah. First off, good use of smorgasbord. I highly appreciate that. And two, I think you're right. Is that part of me almost wishes that words that were spoken by James Gunn that we'll get into as we actually discuss the slate itself is the word Elseworlds. And part of me wishes that if they were going to take the route that they wound up eventually taking, which is all these different movies are not necessarily all in the same universe, that I almost wish they had just gone straight up Elseworlds to begin with. And that, they didn't try to put a universe together, that they were just making movies, and that the movies, if they were worth making, they would make them. And then perhaps later down the road, decide to make a, cinematic universe, as it were. And that's where the mixed message has been. We've gotten Snyder's, Batman, Superman stuff, but then we've gotten, Joker standalone movie. We've gotten Matt Reeves, the Batman. We've gotten, Harley Quinn and Birds of Prey, which is a Harley Quinn with a whole other Joker, and all these other, tie-ins that are tie-ins, but not tie-ins, but are they tie-ins? It's difficult to really piece that all together into one thing. And they wouldn't have had to had they just went with the multiverse angle to begin with that DC had for all those many years. That at least one person on this call is a steward of Mr. Murdo. You know, get the whole multiverse thing going to start rather than forcing it to try to explain why there's 87 universes running around at once. I think that might have made a lot more sense. Poisonally.
I think their job is by 2027 to change your mind.
Yes.
So I think where you're feeling right now, I don't think you're going to be alone in that.
Yeah.
I think their job is, though, so it's what, 2025, I think, that the Superman movie is right now.
Yep.
So, and the reason why I'm saying 2027 is that gives you a chance to cycle in some of these other alternative offerings that are coming in, which we're going to be delving into.
Right.
But that really is their job. And it's a tough one because I don't think you're going to be alone in your feeling off of that.
Yeah.
So, you know, out of the gate, they've really got to do really well with the Superman movie. And then everything that comes afterwards, they have to really direct people to that so that when 2027 hits, they've got this diehard audience that really is like devoted, which I think the Marvel films, going back to them again, have really established that for a casual crowd. I say casual, I mean casual in the sense that they're not the diehard comic book fans.
Yeah.
They've actually become fans of the film universe in a way that is its own subculture to the crowd that we're used to kind of associating ourselves with. I mean, there are people, but they're not getting the paper product like we did.
Well, and I think also when you talk about getting things announced like another Superman, a Batman, and different things that we've seen before, the first thing, at least a gut reaction at first, is, oh, again, a Superman. We just can we start with something else? But that's not the way they went. My camera's still wigging out. So I think there's also that extra. It's going to take a little bit more to convince some people, and myself included, that it's going to be something adventurous, and rather than end up being a one-off of this, that, or the other thing, and then not come to anything in the end.
Well, didn't they announce, correct me if I'm wrong, that Cavill is not going to play Superman?
Yes,
correct.
Mm-hmm. How do we feel? How do we feel about that?
I'm a little bit miffed considering what happened in Shazam. Like,
yeah,
I thought we'd get another chance with him.
I think that's a significant reason why a lot of people went to see the Black Adam movie in the first place.
Yeah.
That was teased in such a way to suggest it was going to be a bigger element of that movie and of other future movies, and now it seems that's not going to.
Yeah.
And even before then, we saw torso down in the first Shazam movie.
Sure.
Of Superman. Even if it wasn't Cavill, it was clearly supposed to be his Superman in the suit.
Yeah.
And not the case anymore. I understand why they're not, because if they're going back in time and they're giving us a younger, take on Superman, that's fine. But
I get that to a certain extent, but we already had Smallville. We've already got Lois and Clark.
Yeah.
I mean, Superman and Lois. I don't know. I don't necessarily, and I could be wrong. It could be fantastic. I'll go see it. It's awesome. But I don't know that right now, just hearing it, that I need another Superman movie right now this way.
Well, the bright side is that you have at least 2 or 3 years to stew on that until
sure.
eventually coming out, because
and there's a bunch of stuff to see before that.
Oh yeah.
To Shane's point, we have a movie that came out recently that did gangbusters in Spider-Man. I mean, which had a multiverse in it that I don't think a lot of people walked out confused from.
Right.
So,
and what kills me about that,
times.
What kills me about that, and always has since they've announced it in the Marvel movies, I love it. It's great, but they are not the ones that normally have a multiverse. It was always DC.
Yeah.
It drives me insane that everyone's like, "Oh, this is great what Marvel's doing, multiverse." Well, yeah, it is. It's fun, but DC did it first for a long time.
DC did it.
But kind of shied away from it.
To go back to Sean's point, Marvel just executed it far better in the films.
Yeah.
Well,
where
DC never gave it a chance.
It's just a hodgepodge.
And DC did attempt it in a way, because we did have Crisis on Infinite Earths with the TV shows.
But that was only recently in the CW. They've owned DC for who knows how many years now, and they've never even given it a thought, which is fine because that's at the time period that wouldn't be acceptable. Mm-hmm. But as soon as Marvel even had a hint of it, I kind of thought, well, maybe DC should kind of catch up in that way. I didn't want them to do it the same way. I didn't want them to put out 3 or 4 single movies, culminate to a Justice League movie. I didn't want them to follow the same exact formula as Marvel. I think that would have looked like a cop out. Oh, well, look, they work this way, so we can do that. So again, I applaud them for trying things like Superman, Batman right away. It just didn't work. And going to a Justice League, but it just didn't work.
Yeah.
Some things did. I still enjoy it to a certain extent, but it's not what I expect from a Justice League movie.
Well, when we talk about trying things, let's get into the slate and let's get into things I did not expect to come out of James Gunn's mouth.
No, not at all.
Or anyone's, for that matter.
Exactly. Immediately announcing a Creature Commandos animated series and possibly even then eventually live action, because he mentioned they're going to try to get whoever voices these characters in animation to then eventually play these same characters in live action. Whether it be showing up in other films or whether they wind up making a Creature Commandos, film after the fact. But starting off with a Creature Commandos animated series written by James Gunn. Okay.
I was excited by this because this is the kind of property James Gunn would excel at working on. And I don't know if you guys, I'm sure Murd has read some Creature Commandos. Man, I read some when I was a kid.
Got a hardcover collection at home, I think.
There you go. And it's so fun. It's so idiosyncratic, and it's perfect for James Gunn. So I'm really pleased that they're going to do this.
Yeah. Talk about left field.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
And I'm not opposed to that either.
think about what he did with Guardians, right? You can do the same thing here with Creature Commandos.
Yeah.
So
and that's the Weasel from from Suicide Squad. Okay,
it is indeed. Yep, that
would look something like it.
Which is Sean Gunn, James Gunn's brother.
Now, the only thing about this in particular is, yes, I think it's a perfect fit for something James Gunn will excel at. I don't want it to follow a similar formula to Guardians.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my fear.
Yep.
Because
Or
we got a
Suicide
little bit
Squad
of that with Suicide Squad. We got a little bit of that with Peacemaker even. I don't want that to be everything. I don't want it to always be extreme silliness. I want some good stories, and I'm sure he's capable of it, but I want to see it.
Yeah, I agree.
And characters that we're starting off with are Rick Flag Sr., Nina Mazursky.
Mm-hmm. Yep, daughter of the originator of Project M back in wartime.
Dr. Phosphorus, Eric Frankenstein. Yeah. G.I. Robot.
G.I. Robot. All right.
Weasel and Bride of Frankenstein. Those are our main characters for this animated series, which will be coming soon in one form or another. Sean, what do you think about this being the first thing out of James's mouth in the presentation?
It made me so happy. I share some of the concerns here, where I don't want it to, like, everything that they wind up doing when, especially it's James Gunn, to go like super silly. I've enjoyed those movies. Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm a huge fan.
Oh, great movie.
So I mean, everything that he's done. So I'm at the point where if his name's on something, I'm going to go see it because his name's on it. So he's gotten that trust from me because he's going to make something enjoyable. The thing that I really was excited about with this is it's a sign that they're not going to just stick with the well-known mainstay characters, which was my biggest concern. And it's my biggest concern when they do the comic book relaunches. It's, are we going to lose some of the experimental characters, some of the ones that really can, play around with the imagination? Right. And boy, I'm like, Creature Commandos, talk about one that you're going to pull out.
Yeah.
It's an exciting announcement.
And they needed to do that from DC and Warner Brothers because we've only gotten, for the majority, Batman, Superman. Yes. There's a heck of a lot more of those than any other property. So it's nice to see something fresh and new that's so far left field that nobody even would have thought about it. I think it'll work if it's written well and done well.
And I think that this was also a good sign of at least what he says that he's going to try integration-wise, because we know that for the most part, existing TV shows are winding down. Alfred got canceled, or Pennyworth got canceled. Flash is in its final season. Superman and Lois has at least 2 more seasons, and then we'll probably wind up winding down from there. And that from that point forward, they're, at least for the most part, unless it's a Elseworlds, will wind up having TV and movies have some more further synchronicity, which could wind up working to their benefit. No longer having these side universes and having to try to explain that there's a Flash movie coming out, but there's a Flash TV show, but it's not the Flash, but it's a different Flash. It's it's a whole thing. So hopefully it'll wind up working in their benefit.
I also wouldn't be surprised, though, if Superman and Lois just doesn't have one more season and then done, too. I think it's quite possible they could pull the plug after the next one.
It's possible, yeah. I think it'll get two, honestly. I think
I would hope so.
This upcoming season that's about to come out, and then one more season after that, I could probably wind up seeing for that, just to give it a proper conclusion and wind things down.
What does that make it, 4 total?
Yes, because season 2 just wrapped not too long ago. This is going to be season 3 coming out with a new actor playing one of the kids. Because
I did read that. Yeah.
I think one of the things that they have to do that is something that you just said, Ian, and I think goes back to something we were discussing a little earlier, a proper conclusion.
Yeah.
I think to the point where some of us are a little uneasy is, when you take a look at an appearance of Henry Cavill in Shazam. In Black Adam. And we wanted to see where that was going to go. We now know we're likely not going to see that. Is there some crazy possibility that somewhere down the road they could do that as an Elseworlds? Sure, but signs aren't looking good right now. If I'm playing around with Magic 8 Ball on that one, so for me, and I think for fans in general, whether you're a fan of just movies, TV shows, or comics or whatever, leaving people hanging and never really resolving your story starts to burn people, and they're less likely to buy in. Especially when you've got a shared universe with a continuing story. So I think it's really important when they make these decisions, the TV show, Superman and Lois, whether it's season 4 or it's season 5 or they ended in season 4 and then do a special afterwards or something, whatever they do, wrap it up somehow.
Yeah.
It's so easy nowadays to do that via streaming services or whatever. Wrap it up. That way people feel like they've gotten something complete. Their ability to do that now, I know it costs money, and I'm not naive to that component. But in the end, there's a certain fan service to that. When I follow anything, I appreciate when they at least end a season where the show's going to be done and there's not some crazy cliffhanger that I'm like, well, what's going to happen with
Yeah. Now, something I wanted to ask the group and see if any of you heard what I heard reading whatever on articles online. A lot of it could be rumors, and that's kind of what I wanted to bring it to this group to see. That they've talked to Aquaman. Oh my God,
Jason
Momoa, and they still kind of want him as Aquaman.
Yeah.
They've sort of talked to Gal Gadot at times, and she might be Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
So, what is the thought of? Okay, they're not going to have Henry Cavill now, but down the road after a couple younger Superman movies.
Well, and to be fair, that is in a way what James Gunn said. He said he's not working with Henry Cavill right now. He did basically say those words, that he'd love to work with Henry in the future on another project. Didn't necessarily say that it would be a Superman movie. Could very wind up playing somebody else in the DC universe.
It could be.
The door is not forever closed.
But even the thought of, for whatever story purposes James Gunn thinks is needed, there needs to be younger Superman stories. And then what if it's a Kingdom Come Superman that comes down later? I don't know. Just
could be.
There's just something about a couple things that he said that just makes me think, well, is it really closed on him forever? Because it's not how I read it when I was reading it.
None of these things are closed forever, Shane.
Well, that's true too. I mean, it is comics.
As long as the multiverse is a concept, it could be not the end for Cavill, and also not the end for the version of Superman he's been playing.
And I think it would disappoint me if Warner Brothers, James Gunn, whoever in the movie verse world said there's not going to be any multiverse, any Elseworlds ever. We're just going to focus on what's right here in DC. That would disappoint me, knowing the history of.
I don't think they would. I don't think they wouldn't leave themselves with a back door.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right? And I can't imagine that they're not looking at the success of what Spider-Man and Doctor Strange did with the multiverse in Marvel and thinking, well, it could work over here. Because it could. It did for years in your comics, and they were fantastic.
Yeah.
And I didn't need everything spoon-fed explained about it.
Once stability is reached, once a universe is ironed out and we know what direction he's actually going in, that's when you can start being funky. that's when you can start being like, all right, okay, maybe we'll throw a little bit of this in, a little bit of that in, and change things up for variety's sake. But there has to at least be a bedrock, and I don't think we've ever really had a bedrock with the DC. DC movies.
No. And this is just a portion of Chapter 1, right? It's not the whole thing. It's just what's coming out the next couple of years.
Yeah, and going back to the slate, one of the other things that he mentioned is a Amanda Waller TV series, where Viola Davis will come back. Recent EGOT winner Viola Davis will come back. Will come back to the role of Amanda Waller once more for this series, along with members of the quote unquote Team Peacemaker, aka the guys who put the Peacemaker team together. And probably some behind the scenes people as well. But for that much, I'm glad to see Waller coming back, and the door's also not closed on eventually when he has more time to himself to possibly do more Peacemaker in one form or another. But until then, we get some Amanda Waller action and maybe some Suicide Squadness going on or something a little bit different.
Yeah, I would have preferred it to be a Suicide Squad show instead of just being called Waller, but we'll see what they do with it.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about a Waller show is because of her machinations, they can bring in all kinds of, let's call them secondary B characters that we've never seen before, and bring them in and make them interesting to a wider audience.
Sure,
absolutely, yeah. And we've already seen members of her family in other shows, so this it makes sense to make that happen, and perhaps increase. It's just called Waller after all. It's not just called Amanda Waller, so there could be more going on there than even we know.
More Wallers.
Yeah.
Did I read that one of the Creature Commandos is going to be in the Waller show too, or at least making an appearance in it? Isn't that what they were talking about, how they might cross over?
Yeah, I think they tried to say as much, but nothing's like official yet in that situation. But yes, that would make a lot of sense, and honestly, I hope so. That would be a good way to just iron out the whole animated live actionness of it all, nice and early. By the way, written by Watchmen's Crystal Henry and Supernatural's Jeremy Carver. That's the team behind this. It says Supernatural's Jeremy Carver, but also I'm pretty sure Doom Patrol's Jeremy Carver, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, so I'm glad to see Jeremy Carver getting more work after Doom Patrol. I love Doom Patrol. I'm about a season behind on that one, but I'm also glad, as Sean mentioned, that at least that gets enough of a conclusion because they knew that an ending was coming.
Yeah,
wrap that up. So good to see. Then some show about some schlub named Booster Gold.
I know, right? That's talk about another thing that for me was totally out of left field. Never did I think they'd announce something like this.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm thrilled, but I really hope it's silly to the point of making Booster at times look like a buffoon, but you get the whole he's a hero that nobody can know he's a hero part of it too.
Yeah.
To me, that's such an important part of the character, that he really does care and really does do things right, but he can't tell anybody about it, and nobody can really know much about it for the most part.
And the Blue Beetle film that's coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So is that just? Forgive me, Shane, because I'm thinking. I'm wondering if Blue Beetle would appear in the show, but is that Blue Beetle going to be? Where is that character being established in terms of a universe?
Well, that's before the whole universe reboot, I think.
Yep,
and
that's
it's all Jaime.
year.
Yeah.
But it's not down with the Elseworld stuff either. So
I'm pretty sure Jaime is going to fall within whatever universe they're setting up.
Yeah.
We just don't know exactly where and when and yada, yada, yada. So
and I'm pretty sure Ted's a mentor in that movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't surprise me if Booster in an extra credit scene showed up, or there's some mention of it.
Possible. Yeah.
And then it certainly wouldn't surprise if none of that happens and the Blue Beetle movie happens. It's nothing for me to think that Beetle in some form where Ted won't show up in a Booster.
Shane, I want you to have that moment.
Mm-hmm.
I do too. Now, to me, seriously, that's really what should have been called Brave and the Bold, is a Booster and Beetle something, not the Batman.
Yeah, I could see where you're coming from with that one. Yeah. But yeah.
I love that Booster is going to be a series. because I think he's one of those characters that really needs to be done in a series.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Because part of the fun of Booster is the fact that he's the friend that you want to smack upside the head some of the times. But then there's other episodes where you really get to the core that there's more underneath. And you can't tell that in a movie. I think you really need the expanded storytelling to really get to understand why the character's cool. And he's a cool character. But you need all of that. You need the silliness, sure, but you need to know that it's also an outer layer to somebody who's got a bruised ego. He's got some damage about him, but then there's actually a good guy in there as well, too, that sometimes he hides from himself.
Sure.
And I think that's something you can really tell well in a series. So one of the things that's been exciting about the announcements for me has been their choices on what's a film and what's a series.
Yeah.
Because I think they've made some really good strategic choices on taking things that, okay, people aren't going to know a lot about this. This really needs to be a series.
Yeah.
And I think that part is so far been, I get what they're doing. And I like that part.
And some of that is you really need, if it's not going to be Ted, you maybe need his sister to help bring that through. And her character serves a purpose through his story as well.
And Billy West the Skeets, please. Billy West.
Well, that goes without question. And as much as I love that Booster showed up in Smallville, don't give me Skeets on a wristwatch. I want Skeets.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're not going to have it any other way. I'm pretty sure you're going to get Skeets of Skeets.
Yep, the budget for special effects will be a bit higher this time around.
Significantly so. Yeah.
But that was a little bit of a left field kind of announcement for me.
Well, clearly they just knew what you needed, and all those years of you plotting out movies and what have you on the show. They're like, all right, well, let's throw him a bone. Well,
one of those comments, one sentence that sounded all right. Let's put our show around it. Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Absolutely. Speaking of what's a show and what's a movie, we already knew there was going to be a Green Lantern show of some kind. Now we know from this James Gunn, slate that it's not necessarily the Green Lantern show we were going to get. Greg Berlanti's Green Lanterns is out the window. They've started from scratch, and instead we're getting from the sounds of things, a little bit more of a more grounded take on the Green Lantern Corps, with Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart as the leads. And it's going to be space copy, exactly the way that I was kind of hoping Green Lantern would be, rather than Guardians of the Galaxy. We're getting like Law and Order Special Victims Lanterns, which, it sounds good to me. Just again, all depends on the execution.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm hoping that, it's going to focus on them too, but I want to see more of the core in there somewhere. I can't imagine we wouldn't. Is it more grounded on Earth, though? Like based out of Earth?
Yep, they use the word terrestrial specifically.
Yeah.
Which I'm not 100% thrilled about that.
I'm sorry, Murd.
Yeah, we're going to see the Hal and John and their dynamic, their relationship. That'll be a good thing to develop over a period of episodes.
And I like
the idea of a Green Lantern police proceed, but I think that I'd like them to get out into space a little more. Okay, Chris, go ahead.
No, just the terrestrial component. I wonder if they're going to borrow some elements from even though it was Green Arrow, the classic Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil stories, if they're going to have the two of them traveling around Earth, for example, which could be interesting.
Yeah. It says for the actual description of it, let me see here for the full description. I'm trying to find the word terrestrial, but I kind of remember that word being in there at some point as well. Whether or not they mean that in a broad sense and not actually Earth, or whether or not they mean all on Earth, that's its own thing.
It's all on Or. They're just going to walk around looking at Guardians.
Here we go. It's more of a true detective. It's more of a true detective type mystery with our two lanterns, a terrestrial based mystery. There's the words. Yep. Explain Saffron. What with Gunn continuing on by saying the series is what leads into the overall story that we're telling throughout the different movies and TV shows, and we find it's ancient horror on Earth. And these guys are basically, super cops on Precinct Earth.
So Precinct Earth tends to imply that there's going to be at least reference to the fact that they're part of a larger space force.
Oh, no,
I kind of get what they're doing a little bit, and I don't know if this is conscious or not. So the movie, I liked the director's cut of the movie, the previous movie with Ryan Reynolds. I thought the director's cut was a far superior film to the one that was originally released in the theater. But obviously, overall, that movie did not do well and did not meet the expectations. So I wonder if this is a conscious choice to kind of ground it and connect the characters on Earth. I think what would be a mistake off of this, actually, to the point of everything that's being said here, if this first initial season, if it is really truly a lot more Earth-based, which is what it looks like it's going to be, if hopefully it's successful and it leads to a season 2 that starts to expand out further and slowly take us out, get us to know more of the Lanterns, because there's so much lore there, so many exciting things you can do with a Green Lantern series that the opportunities are really endless, and I want to see. I so want to see that.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to go over the rest of the TV shows, and then we'll go back to the movies, just because there's only a few more here. Paradise Lost is the Wonder Woman TV series, essentially set in Themyscira. They don't actually they don't mention Wonder Woman, but they say Themyscira, so obviously it's going to be at least some Amazons. It's going to touch on Wonder Woman's history and character arc. It's not clear if she'll star in it, but it focuses on the genesis and political intrigue of an island of all women. So whether or not we get more Game of Thrones or we get more Atlantis attacks, remains to be seen. Exactly what's going on with this one, but I would hope we would get Wonder Woman in some way, but I could easily understand why we don't.
It says the events really take place before Diana's birth. That was Safran pointed that piece out. So this is really meant to be more of a prequel to the Wonder Woman story.
Got it. Okay.
Whether or not the whole season will wind up being that way, will remain to be seen. But which has me more hopeful that it's not going to be what you're talking about, where it's like going into some like Atlantis attacks or things like that. It's going to be more of how the Amazons came to be. And I think there's a cool story to be told there that's unfold. Execution is going to be the key here, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's the difference between linking it to Game of Thrones and maybe some other things that have tried to go down that path but haven't quite succeeded. I think they've talked about how they're trying to line up like video games and other things to this. I also think there's an opportunity out of that, if they execute the show right, to turn that into a really kick-butt game that I would love to play.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep, running around as Artemis, shooting arrows at people. Like, why the heck not? Yeah.
All I want out of this property is kangas. We don't see Amazons riding around on giant kangaroo creatures. We have been gypped collectively as fans.
I'm going to go back to my comment about the game. I want to do that in the game.
I support this desire of yours, Sean. You have the right.
We could not be more in sync right now.
Absolutely the case. Absolutely the case. All right, moving it back to movies. Let's talk about the most important of these openings. July 11th, 2025. We're sitting here in February of 2023. So that's close to 3 years from now, a little less than 3 years from now. We will be getting Superman Legacy, which will be the quote unquote start of the DCU for Peter Safran and James Gunn. And it focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way. He is kindness in a world that thinks of kindness as old-fashioned.
See, this sounds like the Superman that Murd would really want in a film. Correct, Murd?
It's a good start.
Yeah,
I mean, like the phrasing.
I think what's key for this is they got to get someone who can pull Clark Kent off. Like that's absolutely essential.
Well, they've had a couple of people who could have, if only they'd been given movies that would allow them to.
Right, but we haven't.
It happened to Brandon Routh. To a certain extent, it happened to Henry Cavill too.
Yeah.
A couple of super actors who I would have liked to see play Superman in a movie that was actually good.
I agree, Murd, in that I wanted more Clark Kent in both those films because it's like Brandon Routh. You could see was capable of doing that, but they just didn't give him enough to do with that. And for me, like when you go back to, I mean, to me, it always goes back to the Reeve film. But I mean, one of the reasons that movie is so great is that he so captured the Superman persona versus the Clark Kent persona. Again, the classic scene where he removes his glasses and he stands up.
Yeah,
Lois Lane's apartment. That's Superman right there. We haven't had that since, really. So I'm also emboldened by what they're saying here, but that they got to get that balance right.
Yep, no question about it. And it's also refreshing to hear the words that Superman is for everyone. That's a 4-quadrant film that should speak to everyone in the world. And I'm hopeful that of everyone, James Gunn will understand the character of Superman. I could easily see that just for his history as a fan of comics, period, that he would be able to get it right. And there's no talk on who's going to be directing it yet. We know that the initial script is being written by Gunn and a couple of co-collaborators. But I'm really looking forward to this movie.
On the article you pulled up too, they mentioned the fact that J.J. Abrams movie is still going forward.
Yes, a separate Superman movie produced by J.J. Abrams through Bad Robot and written by Ta-Nehisi Coates remains in development and will exist outside the DCU.
Is that where Michael B. Jordan is rumored to play Superman?
That is the rumor, yes.
Okay.
Yep, and that would be an Elseworlds film.
You got it. Yep. Yeah. And I was personally very surprised to see that still on any sort of slate because we haven't heard anything about that movie in a while now. But actually, now that I think about it, let's see how Creed 3 does at the box office, and that'll probably say whether or not Michael B. Jordan possibly winds up directing this, or maybe winds up getting his Superman movie, because that's a lot. It's a lot to put on somebody to be a tentpole in any way like that, and you got to make money in order to do that. So
yeah.
And they are saying that inspiration for this film, while not necessarily the story, All-Star Superman will be a high inspiration for the tone and personality of the film.
I could get into that.
That's magnificent news.
that is what I like to hear right there.
What's also interesting, Ian, is that they're going back to the use of the phrase "truth, justice, the American way."
Yeah, that was a big no-no for a while.
And it's interesting to see how they're going to interpret that in the film. Like, you go back to Action Comics 1, Superman is a progressive social crusader for working class people, essentially. So I'd be interested to see how they're going to apply that phrase, in the 21st century.
Well, and I guess on an off chance, there's a slight possibility it's a story that's going to be told years ago.
That could be too.
And he just ages a little bit differently and has a little bit more wisdom when he comes together with the other DC heroes. Just that the American way part of it sounds extremely, and in a good way, extremely old-fashioned, extremely classic.
I think it's also a good thing to separate it from other movies that are out there. I think embracing that, we a lot of things you hear about now is the superhero movie fatigue and things like that. I don't buy into that. Yeah. I think what's going to keep people coming back with any kind of movie in any genre is going to be something that feels different, something that feels fresh. It's exciting. I think really embracing what makes Superman and defining it for now. Yeah. Chris, you were mentioning that before. What does that look like today? I think really defining that in this case, trying to define it for 2025, I think is going to be really key to kicking this off and making this a character that people want to follow and a universe that people want to follow, with this being that tentpole that's supposed to kick this off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Sean, I don't buy the superhero fatigue either in a world where over the last 40 or 50 years you've had soap operas that have lasted with repeating storylines over and over again, and they really didn't lose anything until recently. I can't see, if it's a good story and it's well done, there's not really going to be fatigue about it. Someone will go see it, and even if it's not opening weekend popular, if it's good, word will spread and it will become popular.
I think in many cases the idea of fatigue is coming from film critics.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, quite possibly, which I don't ever read or listen to.
Yeah. And honestly, it all comes down to this. If you're fatigued about it, don't watch it.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Whereas the film critics, unfortunately, don't have a choice.
100% the case, Murd. Yes, yeah, and I personally know people, in the podcast community and on the super group, elsewhere on the internet, and what have you, and even in real life that have stopped seeing them in movies and just wait for it to show up on streaming or elsewhere in order to experience it when they want to experience it because they're tired of the the pomp and circumstance of going their opening weekend. And that's I completely get that.
Yeah.
That Wakanda Forever just came out on Disney Plus this last week as we're recording this. And it's done gangbusters on streaming for Disney Plus because there's tons of people who didn't go to the theater and are first watching it for the first time now.
And some of my intake for anything superhero related is, especially as long as one or both of my boys want to go see it, I'm happy to go to the theater to see it because it's just it's just something we do. It's an exciting family event that we do. And then I gauge how good I think it is depending on how excited I am to watch it again streaming in some instances.
Yep.
So if I jump on it right away and I watch it once or twice right away, then yeah, that's really good to me. If I'm like, well, I liked it in the theater, but I don't need to really watch it again. That tells me a whole different thing about myself watching superhero movies at times.
Yeah. And by watch, you mean rip the audio of and eventually wind up carrying around with you.
Well, you know what?
Gotcha,
you know what I love about the way iPhones work now is you start a movie, you can then swipe up and minimize it to this little inch-long screen. I can turn it off so the screen's black and it still plays without wasting the battery on the screen. Perfect for me.
Any movie could be an audio drama if you try hard enough.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they were to begin with. It was just, audio dramas were just movies in your head. I mean,
exactly.
They're great.
And talk about. Go ahead.
I'm looking at that date, that July 11th, 2025, and I'm excited about the date, which might seem strange, but it's the timing, the fact that it's a little further down the road. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, there's a movie that has to be created in this process, so that's part of what's driving it. But if you take a look at the weird times we're in right now, so Marvel's established, right? And they've built trust. They've had a great plan along the way. And, what they've done with their interconnected universe is something, not everything was perfect, sure, but it's certainly been impressive with what they've done. But DC's history, and it's crazy to say this with their history in film because I grew up my whole life with, great DC movies. But as a shared universe, Marvel's weathered the pandemic because they were able to navigate this forced streaming that we had first, due to the shutdown. Then this streaming evolution as more and more of these services have come on and they're competing with each other. And now they're trying to use these series as ways to, and movies as ways to draw you into their streaming. And the growth of streaming platforms for TV because there's a strong enough foundation. But the question still becomes, how sustainable is that with what you've got to fund in order to put that in there? And at what point in time do movie theaters enter back into it? Do they enter back into it the way that they did before? What's the multiplex going to look like at that point in time? What I'm excited about that is the DCU. This has the advantage of spending this time not only in developing these properties, but also further understanding how people want to approach content, because I think that's a question mark right now. I think it's kind of all over the place at the moment. And I think the numbers are like a roller coaster right now, where there's sometimes surprising movies that didn't do well. And then there's other ones that shockingly out of nowhere become ones that were supposed to tank or even had let's use Avatar as an example. That was one where leading up to it, there was questions on whether or not it would even do what it was supposed to, and then shot through the roof. And then there's movies like Smile that were originally just supposed to go to streaming, and they decided to release it to theaters, and it did gangbusters. It did quadruple its budget. So that's it's an excellent point. So I think that's something that they're going to get an advantage from, is just a greater understanding of how to communicate to audiences on this is how you can and should see this based on how you're digesting it now. And I'm hoping they take full advantage of that time to really deliver this the right way, because I think that's an opportunity that they need, because they haven't built that yet the way that Marvel has. Whereas Marvel can have some missteps along the way. And because they're so established at this point, you can go through a speed bump or two where maybe something didn't hit the numbers that they quite expected, and they can recover because people will want to continue on with the story and give another movie a chance. So I think that part really does excite me right now, because I'm worried about films and theaters and what that looks like and their ability to deliver that. So.
Well, and we even saw that with Marvel with Eternals. That didn't do real great in the theater, and yet none of the other Marvel movies missed a beat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know what? Just because you were talking about dates, Sean, now I'm a little bit disappointed, just a little bit, that it's not coming out on June 12th, because June 12th is Superman Day.
Yeah.
And that would have been a excellent. It even falls out that June 12th is a Thursday. So technically, you could have the release date be the 13th and have your Thursday night screenings be on June 12th and have it be, Superman Day screenings. But
and who's to say that won't happen?
That's true. You're right.
That could be the plan the whole time. That's far enough out that pulling it in a month may not be that hard.
It's possible. That Ant-Man itself. Ant-Man was originally supposed to be a July release. And it wound up being a February release, and it's coming out in a few weeks. Yeah. So you never know what dates are going to change there. But talk about something quite literally completely different than Superman Legacy: The Authority. What? Yet again, not a movie I was expecting to be announced.
No, and I don't think of it. I still don't think of it as a DC property. I know that they've been involved in the DC universe for a number of years now, but just in my head, you hear it, and the first thing I think of is the way it originally came out. It's just not part of that. So I still have to get used to that. Like you said, totally would never have guessed that.
Yeah. And if they're going to do The Authority, they have to go all in.
Absolutely.
Don't try to neuter it in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. It should be edgy as all hell, deeply disturbing. And dark humor and intrigue, and the characters you question whether or not you should even like them.
Yeah.
All of that should be there.
Gunn said the right words. He said it isn't just a story of heroes and villains, and not every movie and TV show is going to be about good guy versus bad guy. Gunn said there are people that are very questionable, like the Authority, who basically believe that you can't fix the world in an easy manner, and they take things into their own hands. And then Safran said they're kind of like Jack Nicholson and A Few Good Men. They know that you want them on the wall, or at least they believe that. And
excellent. That's gives me that's encouraging.
Yeah, it's being written now. He declined to say who is the screenwriter, but this is yet another film in the slate. That's going to be coming out. I'm not sure. Did they give a release date for the Authority, or is that still a nebulous time in the future?
I think it's just in the future. I think Superman is the only thing that really had a date on it.
Okay, cool. But yeah, it has potential. It really does, and it always has. It's just where's it going to fit, and how they make it fit is very important here. Is Waller going to be involved somehow to try to tentpole it into the DC? Who knows?
It has the potential to deliver what I was hoping Black Adam was going to deliver. With the fact that with follow-ups and sequels, with the fact that we're going to get Superman versus Black Adam, the fact that he was such a different character than Superman, like that's why I wanted to see the two of them, go at it. And the Authority, if this works, I mean, with the kind of characters that they are, could really deliver that kind of experience. I just want to see it pay off beyond like the initial film. Obviously, that's easy enough to say I can get behind the initial movie, because seeing these characters on screen, if they really, to the point of what you were saying, really embrace it, this could be a super cool movie. It's where they go from there, as they flesh out this chapter further and then go into whatever, the next chapters are going to be. that really has the potential to be really cool.
Oh yeah. Yep. And there's some great comics there. You know, there's some Warren Ellis and Mark Miller stuff. There's other creators who have worked on it, and for that matter, you could even wind up bringing in some Stormwatch stuff, because Stormwatch was what came before Authority, and had some great political intrigue and takes on characters that you hadn't really seen before in comics, right there on the page, that could translate very well into the movie world. Now for the movie that Shane wishes Booster Gold was called, but
that's true.
The Brave and the Bold. This one, I think I might even be more hyped for than Superman in certain ways, because it's been a long time since we've gotten a Robin on screen.
Yeah,
it has been.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
And even their talk of the extended Bat family appearing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And even if it's Damian Wayne, I mean, we know Damian Wayne can sometimes be a bit annoying, but at the same time, he's grown as a character significantly since his initial introduction. And I actually really like who Damian is as a character right now in the DC comics, like the stuff he's been doing with Titans, stuff, you know, the interaction with Jonathan, like it all makes sense for the character to be what he is. But yeah, this is new territory. This is completely new territory. And I'm looking.
It's not the kickoff film. I'm glad they didn't go to Batman as the kickoff. Now, I mean, and I'm a Batman junkie, so I mean, you got me no matter what on Batman. If they would have said, "Hey, all we're going to do is a Batman movie," I still would have been all in.
Yeah.
But if you're doing a shared universe like this, I think the leaning is to go to Batman, because Batman's been a proven box office commodity, and you can get, you know, a Batman film. I'm glad they didn't kick off with this. I think it's a smart move to push it a little further down the road. You got the Batman Part 2 coming out already as an Elseworlds movie.
Yeah.
So taking advantage of the fact that you can push us a little further down. I just hope, if they're going to say the title, The Brave and the Bold, I'm hoping that this isn't the only movie in the series, and that in future movies, we have some opportunities to maybe do some team ups or something with other characters, because I would love to see these movies be used as a way to introduce characters. But that's, of course, you know, the geek in me that grew up with the original Brave and Bold comic. That's like, team them up with people. I want to see that.
Well, and even as good as the comic was, even the cartoon Batman Brave and the Bold was phenomenal at introducing DC characters.
Yeah, very good point. And this is being described as at least Damian's described as a little son of a bitch, assassin and a murderer. So that's about right. But they're pulling from Grant Morrison's Batman stuff. So when he first introduced Damian and the Batman and Robin stuff, and they also name check Tom King, who is participating in the DCU writers' room, and leads, and this all just sounds right. It sounds like a step in the right direction. But it also muddies the waters, because you will have other, you know, Batman movies running out there. You know, the fact that we are getting the Batman 2, that's entirely separate from this as an Elseworlds.
Well, even if it wasn't an Elseworlds, I wouldn't stress about that myself, because Batman and Batman 2 are so early in his career.
That's true.
That if you're already going to have a Batman and Robin with Damian being established, that means you've already had at least Dick Grayson,
right?
Hopefully, probably Jason Todd, probably Tim Drake. So now you're talking 10 years down the line. I'm okay with that, even if Batman and Batman 2 were in the same universe.
Yeah. Or is Damian the only Robin that we get? That's also a direction that they could go. It's not the direction I would prefer them go.
I'd be a little disappointed if they did.
So, you mean,
I don't know what this means. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Murd.
You're suggesting that in that version of continuity, Damian would be the first Robin, like the Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, etc., would never have existed, and we just start with Damian?
It's possible. I'm not saying it's necessarily the direction that they would go, but if it depends on where they're setting this film, what time period they're setting the film in. more than anything else. Go ahead, Sean.
Safran said it's in the article. He said that this is going to feature other members of the extended Bat family, just because we feel like they've been left out of the Batman stories in theater far too long. Now,
that tells me
what that is. What does he consider the extended members of the Batman family? Because it doesn't specifically, to Murd's question, it doesn't specifically identify that it's going to be previous Robins. Is that going to be established? So I'm curious as to what that means. I admit I was reading into that, but until we actually know how he's viewing that remains a question mark. But I'm hopeful that that means there's going to be a lore that they're alluding to that has just been there all along, which I think is kind of cool.
It's hard to imagine a Batman family, let alone an arc of redemption of sorts for Damian Wayne without there being other past Robins as big brother figures.
Yeah, and you don't have to even call them Robins at this point. It can be Nightwing, Red Hood, even Red Robin, and that works for me just fine.
Oh yeah,
that doesn't shoehorn Damian in any way at this point.
And frankly, they canceled Titans. That tells me they're going to use Dick. Like there's They could have very easily just pushed that to the side and been like, these guys are doing their own thing in their own universe, and so be it. But if they want these shows to be sunsetting and ending their runs, that tells me they probably have plans for the characters. It's the same way we can look at that, the Batgirl film that never was, that's sitting in a can somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised if Barbara Gordon shows up in Brave and the Bold.
I agree.
I
agree.
Possibly even as already Oracle. That's stranger things have happened.
Don't worry, Shane. I have a hunch someday you'll see that film.
Oh, I do too. Even if it's bootlegged out there somewhere.
Now, again, a film that I am really, really looking forward to: Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow.
Because
I was surprised by
I think
that.
they're going to be inspired by the Tom King story.
You better believe it.
Which is magnificent.
Yep.
So
I actually read the first issue of
Supergirl it's so good.
Tomorrow in the lead to this episode, because I hadn't gotten to it yet, and I read the first issue, and it's like it's the best way to describe it is like it's almost like Supergirl meets Conan with some Ferris Bueller's Day Off thrown in for good measure. Because she just turned 21, so that's why she's on the planet to basically blow off some steam and actually get drunk as a 21-year-old because it's a red sun, and then the story goes from there. This could be the fantasy epic and the space epic that DC needs, like all rolled into one package.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Ian. Didn't they say in the copy that she's going to be a harder edged character?
Yes.
Yeah, which if they're going to go by this story, that's only appropriate. And because the average film goer doesn't know that much about Supergirl, there's so much room here they can do with the character to make her just that much more captivating.
Absolutely. Yeah. They say we see the difference between Superman, who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents from the time he's an infant, versus Supergirl, who was raised on a rock chip off of Krypton and watched everyone around her die and be killed in terrible ways for the first 14 years of her life. Gunn calls this Supergirl much more hardcore, though King's series also involved Krypto the Superdog, which I hope we get.
Me too.
Yes.
And don't forget Comet the Super Horse.
Yes.
Comet's in that story too.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I know. That's the main reason I'm looking forward to reading it eventually, which I have not yet done.
Yep.
The time bubble.
Yes.
It's proof that you can be harsher and more, challenging and still have the don't mess with my pets.
Yeah,
absolutely. So awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no. In fact, that would just make it even more badass, Think of John Wick,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The example.
Yep. But this is completely, of all the Supergirl stuff that for that matter, I wasn't expecting a Supergirl film to be announced, but of all the Supergirl series that were going to be potentially adapted, this was not the one that I picked, and I am very pleased. Very pleased.
Well, I do think it makes the most sense from a more recent perspective, something more modern. Mm-hmm. As much as I like a lot of Supergirl in the past, I don't know that it would translate well at this point.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But also, like, it's very modern. Like it just wrapped last year. You know, this is a fresh take. And something that I'll point out, but even before I get to this last one, and it's a problem with communication, and it's also one of the problems with talking to different parts of your brand, that when these announcements took place, 3/4 of the books that this stuff was based on were out of print.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The authority is like being rushed back into print right now because those first couple of books were low on print run and out of print. For a while there, Batman and Robin just came back into print a little while ago, even though that's somewhat recent. But Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, you don't have to worry about that because that's on the shelves. Like that's actually easily accessible in a lot of different ways. All-Star Superman was hard to find for quite some time, also, and like in parts of the world, it's very hard to find outside of digital. But that's just communication between parts of Warner Brothers and stuff like that. That we can't help that, unfortunately. They should have rushed this shit back into production. Anywho,
the wrath of Levinstein.
I've always been a proponent of set up comic book stands at the movie theater in order to get people to buy books like as they're coming out of showings. That should be happening more often, and yet it doesn't. So that's
I work for Top Gun. They had people joining the Navy after those movies.
Yeah.
They'd have recruiters right at the theater.
Let's see how Top Gun Maverick does with getting that recruitment up. We finish off with Swamp Thing.
Not much to say there.
Yeah, outside of the fact that it's Swamp Thing and it's coming soon, and we got the green, and they mention Alan Moore's Swamp Thing as an inspiration. I'm sure there'll probably be even more recent takes, perhaps Snyder's take on Swamp Thing coming a little bit more into the upper echelon of things a little bit. But this is a much more horrific film, but we'll still have Swamp Thing interact with other characters. They added, so not necessarily off in its own corner. But horror films can happen.
Well, Swamp Thing should have strong elements of horror. I mean, that's the very core of the character.
Yep. So here's an important question: what else do we want? Because this is the beginning of their phase one. What do we want in future phases, or what do we want in future announcements at this point? Because this is a lot of stuff to take in.
Well,
possibly until the end of this decade, quite frankly.
And I'm not even sure how to answer that at the moment because we're getting the next Shazam film, the next Aquaman film so soon. I just don't know that there's anything out there to do yet until we see what direction they're going to go with some of these projects they've announced.
And isn't Flash coming out?
Flash is coming out. Yeah, Flash is coming out too. Okay. We have the Green Lantern TV show announced. So just about all of the big guns of the DC universe are kind of covered right now in some capacity for the next few years.
Yeah,
it's more about how those stories are received and what they decide or what we perceive them to decide to do next. And then after Superman Legacy and Creature Commandos and Blue Beetle's done and the Flash movies finally out, maybe after some of those things come to fruition in reality that we can see them, then we can start making those kinds of, well, maybe we'd like to see this, or the JSA should show up because of that, or I don't know, Max Lord's going to be here because of anything, whatever it is. But I think we kind of have to get some of these things under our belt first.
Once again, Shane, this is testament that you should be in charge.
Sure.
Also, about that.
Also, who are our villains?
Right?
Because we know who the heroes are at this point, but who are our villains going to be?
And I don't necessarily want it to be Darkseid because we've tried that.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows?
They need to do Luthor properly again.
They do, not first movie. No way.
No, I understand that, but
they can have him be a side character if
but
they can't have him be the villain.
As one of the great master manipulators of the whole DC universe, he even plays a role in the current Amazing Human Target series that I've been raving about in the show. So, he was. I mean, the way that I like Jesse Eisenberg as an actor, but that was an absurd depiction of Luthor in those films.
I agree.
So I want to see the Machiavellian, I'm going to run for president, Lex Luthor. Like,
but I want a little bit of the mad scientist in there.
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Maybe a green suit too, while we're at it,
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
What else I'd love to see? I mean, there's no mention of it at all yet, but down the road, maybe with the Green Lantern stuff, is Thanagar and the Hawks.
Yeah.
Please.
Because there's so much there's such great. I mean, the Hawk World story alone, there's so much they could mine that makes such compelling TV or films. And
Black Adam gave us Hawkman, so there's no reason to not have him be further integrated in one form or another.
In a perfect world, if you're giving me a wish list, of course I want to see Starman on there as a TV show. I don't want it as a movie. It's got to be
a movie. Can't be a movie.
A long, slow burning TV show. You've got to be able to throw in a couple times past things, a couple talking with Dave. You got to have all that stuff.
Well, Shane, to go back to the points that Ian and Sean were making earlier, if DC's able to really find their sea legs, and then they have the room to as Sean put it, to get funky. Or was it Ian who said that? I forgot.
I think I said funky. Yeah.
Well put. But then they'd have the room to maneuver and do something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're anywhere near that.
That
point yet, unfortunately.
No. Again, I'm amazed that there's a Booster Gold series even talked about.
And is Max Lord going to be the villain of Booster Gold? Or
I hope not. I don't want that yet.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like we would need to build to that. Like, we may even need a JLI series before we get to a Booster.
Well, I'm of course okay with that.
If we're lucky, the Booster Gold series will be set back in the 80s.
Yeah.
So we'll have a chance to do some kind of back formation, building the JLI as a foundation.
As long as it's better than that dreadful Wonder Woman sequel in the 80s, that sounds good to me.
I had such high hopes.
I didn't hate it, but I sure did have some problems.
Oh
with
God.
Brainiac, perhaps for Superman.
My only thought to that is yes, but they did do Brainiac pretty well in Krypton, I thought.
I have never watched Krypton.
It's better than I thought it would be. I mean, it's not great.
It isn't. I saw most of the first season, but I fell asleep on the season finale twice. So.
Enough
to tell you something.
No, I
agree with Shane.
I watched
that
both.
The build-up for Brainiac was pretty good. I don't know what the payoff was like because I couldn't stay awake for it.
It followed the more recent real person Brainiac that they introduced into the comics at that time.
Okay,
and it was done well. But if you're going to do Brainiac, I'd rather see the robot version of him.
Oh, I agree. But especially talking about the, middle of the road between Kryptonian and human and, a man of two worlds. If you do introduce a Brainiac from Krypton, that's quite literally looking to bottle not only his world, but other worlds in the process. That could be pretty cool as a concept to work with.
Yeah,
but I don't know what direction they're going to go. Whether they're going to want to go more grounded with like maybe an intergang thing or Metallo. Like, there's so many different choices to choose from.
Yeah.
Yep. Of course, I'd like to see Bizarro at some point.
Sure.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But first, we'd have to establish the guy playing Superman before we get the Bizarro version of the guy playing Superman. So maybe the second.
Yeah. Important piece.
How about a flying car with boxing fists that come out of it?
Yeah.
Supermobile.
I got one over here. It's right up there. Can't see it.
We could also possibly have a Turtle Boy at some point. Like, can we get a Turtle Boy? All right, maybe not. Sean, who would you be rooting for as a villain for the Superman movie?
Brainiac's up there for me just to see the two of them. There's so many great Superman villains that I would love to see.
Toyman.
Prankster.
Yeah, Toyman would be a modern Toyman.
Oh my God!
Great. I think the trick is I'm going to be careful in what I just said though. I said a modern Toyman. I think the best new stories that they've done with these characters are where they find the right balance of what at the core has always made the character cool, while at the same time modernizing it without losing that. And I think it's a tricky balance to find with some of these characters because, no matter how Silver Agey a character is or things like that, if you look look at what made that character interesting and compelling when they were first launched, and find that essence and keep that in as a part of these characters when you modernize them. So Toyman's one I would love to see, because imagine the gadgets and gizmos and things that you could see on screen that would be really compelling, and spinning that off into a short miniseries or something afterwards, or a miniseries leading into it. Because they're talking about how a lot of these concepts are, the TV series that they're doing, these 7-episode ones, are going to launch potentially into movies or launch certain characters in and back out again. And it's going to be interesting to see how these interact.
Yeah.
Which that part really has me excited. I don't know if there's anything right now where I'm like sitting here going, I really need them to do this. I think what I'm protective of with this slate is, we've lately been dealing with cancellation of this, the cancellation of that, being, that being a lot of the messaging of what's been going on. Mm-hmm. I think what I want to see with this is, let's flesh this out. Let's get these things put out there. Right. Let's build the trust of, we said we're going to be giving you this, and not only are we going to give it to you, but it's going to be great. So while this is being released and they do all the appropriate build to get these out there, then as like, okay, man, I'm really excited for this first phase. What's next? Everybody's eyes are looking at what they're going to do next.
Oh, sure.
I think it's really fun. But that being said, going back to Shane's Starman series, please, because
long overdue.
A 7 episode or 8-episode season of that, where it wraps up, or at some point in time they fold in a Talking with David. I am so, and it needs to be black, needs to have that mix of black and white and color.
Yeah. For the Talking with Davids,
I may be alone at making this statement, but I want Austin Butler to play Jack Knight.
Ooh, what a great idea!
I think he would be completely fit for the role. He's just the right age at this point. Like that would just be killer.
I'd have to look him up. I'm not sure who that is.
He played Elvis.
Yeah, he played Elvis
film.
Yeah, Elvis film. Yeah.
Yes, and got nominated for an Academy Award for it. Yes.
Yes, he did. Yep, he very much did. And then afterwards, for about 6 months, he couldn't stop talking in Elvis voice.
It is habit forming. I speak from experience.
Very,
if he's gonna go all method Jack Knight, I'm cool with that.
Oh yeah.
Plus, I can't. I'm imagining in my head. Oh God, like just what Opal would look like. Oh man, damn.
We've already got a good candidate for the Shade, thanks to Stargirl.
Yep,
yeah,
that's true. Yep.
Indeed.
Yeah. And if the Lantern show at least doesn't plant the seeds for an eventual Sinestro war, where like if they don't find out by the end of that the infection is yellow, and that they and we eventually get our Battle of the Rings somewhere down the line, like so much potential every single way you look at it for what's going on. So no,
I know with Superman, you're going to get 20 minutes of him being on Earth, contemplating how great it was that his parents raised him. The Legion's going to come in, swoop into the far future, and that's it. That's the rest of the movie.
Okay,
Superman and Legion.
Yeah, that's it. Sure. Fine. Legion of Superheroes coming soon. I'm all for it. Let's make it happen. There's a animated movie coming out soon. Actually,
yeah, there is.
Seen some promos for that on YouTube. Yeah.
It's out now.
Is it out now?
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's out. It came out today digitally and physically. So I started watching it this morning. So nice. No spoilers or anything, but I like what I saw so far.
Wasn't there a Legion animated series?
Oh, there was.
Yeah, there was.
I liked it very much.
Was it good? Okay, I never saw it. All right.
Yeah.
I was irrational at the time because I was disappointed that it wasn't a follow-up to the very obvious Supergirl and the Legion of Superheroes they seem to be leading towards. That was going to be, a spin-off of the actual, like Diniverse, and then it didn't go that way. Instead, they did a completely different series. But I've watched a few episodes since, and it's actually really good.
Yeah.
Yep, the one they just released is actually Supergirl and the Legion of Superheroes.
Well, there you go. Yep.
That original one, I think it's only 2 seasons, if I'm right. It might be on HBO Max. I can't quite remember that.
Oh, and one more bit of completely unrelated, announcements that happened this last week, and I texted Chris about this a couple days ago. We are in the works. Amazon Studios is finalizing a deal for Ed Brubaker's Criminal.
Oh, wow.
Head to Amazon Prime. Details are scarce, but the project, written by Brubaker, is described as an interlocking universe of crime stories based on his award-winning comics, and it looks like it's going to happen. Unless it's yet another one of those stories that gets announced and it doesn't actually get followed up, we could very well have Criminal on our screens within the next couple of years.
Everything Brubaker and Phillips have done, all their forays into noir, lend themselves ideally to serialized television. And if Brubaker's involved, as he should be, my expectations would be through the roof for something like this.
I still hope we see that Batman series, which is still not found a home since HBO Max announced that they weren't going to have that animated Batman series that Brubaker was a writer on.
I didn't even hear about this one.
Tim was involved with it. Was it called Batman the Caped Crusader, or was it something?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, I did hear. Was it actually produced or no?
It's in mid production, like even as we speak.
Oh,
it just does not have a home yet. I know there's a bunch of people that have been bidding on it, but nothing's been announced as of yet. So
who is the voice of Batman in it? Do we know?
We don't know. We don't know anything other than the fact that it's in production. But it has to happen. Like, this thing looks so freaking cool from the images.
And he's one of the producers.
He's one of the producers and one of the writers.
Well, okay. Come on.
And in other news.
Oh, man. I feel better.
So do I. It's time once again, ladies and gentlemen, for Muddle the Murd here on Comic Geek Speak. And Murd has more about how you muddle.
Okay, folks, to muddle the Murd, it's a matter of mind over matter. You need to come up with some trivia questions. One Marvel Comics trivia question, one DC question, one question about some other company's comics, and they need to break down chronologically to one question pre-1970, one question between 1970 and 2000 inclusive, and one question about comics post-2000. Come up with 3 questions that meet those criteria. Try not to make them too microgranular. Don't ask about weird little throwaway background details. Just things of substance, please. And confine yourselves to story detail. Please don't ask questions about extra textual stuff like advertisements and letter columns and things like that. So come up with questions and type them out into an email. Don't forget to include the answers to those questions so we'll know whether or not I get them right. Email them to comicgeekspeak@gmail.com with Muddle the Murd in the subject line. Ian will find them. Ian will archive them. Ian will ask them. And if I get all 3 of the questions you ask me wrong, you will have muddled the Murd, and you will be entitled to a fantastic prize.
Terrific. And that prize, once again, sir?
That prize at the moment, courtesy of the Eberly Foundation, is this by the aforementioned criminal team of Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. This is a graphic novel from their Reckless series, The Ghost in You. It's a lovely hardcover, and it's still in its original shrink wrap. And Chris has donated it to the cause.
Best creative team in comics, folks. There it is.
Excellent.
Ask me 3 questions I can't answer, and it's all yours.
Terrific. Well, our attempt today comes from Shane Van Dusen. And he has these words to say before getting to the questions. Greetings, speakers of geek. I am a one-time muddler. I am a long-time listener who always enjoys your content, especially the top 5 lists. Hey, there's a new one out there. Go check it out.
That's right.
Keep up the excellent work. Sincerely, Shane Van Dusen.
It's a good name.
Indeed. And we begin with DC pre-1970. This first appeared in Mystery in Space, Volume 1, Issue 88 from December 1963. What do Thanagarian women wear to denote marriage?
Oh, my goodness. Well, there's that rich Thanagarian culture for you. I'm afraid I don't have an answer to this. The Band of Matrimony. I don't know.
Sean, I'll go to the Thanagarian expert. Sean, any guesses?
Doctor?
No, I haven't married any Thanagarians, so I can't.
Haven't even officiated?
No, I wish I could have. I would have called in on that.
I'm disappointed they haven't turned on you at this point to do so. That's all right. Chris, Shane, any guesses?
No, none.
No, not that.
All right. Well, the correct answer is earrings.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, Thanagarian women put on a pair of earrings, and that is how you know they are married. So there we go.
I was expecting it to be like a specific name, like the rivulet of Garbancho or something.
Yeah.
Well, now that's officially what it's called. So congratulations. I'm going to call Mark Waid right now, and he's going to write it into a comic. It's gonna be great. All right, moving on to Marvel 1970 to 2000. And during the Identity Crisis storyline that happened in Spider-Man, not in DC, so it's that other Identity Crisis storyline, which ran through the various Spider-Man books of the time, Peter Parker adopted 4 new crime-fighting personas, one of which was known as Ricochet.
Uh-huh.
Who created the Ricochet costume?
Oh. Okay, we're taking a step. All right, well, questions about creators are generally considered in bounds. So, who designed the Ricochet costume?
No. And this in particular.
You mean a character?
This is a character, not a creator.
Okay, I misunderstood. Well, I would have given a very wrong answer in that case.
Why I had to step in there, yes. Which character created the Ricochet costume?
Okay. All right. Who that Spider-Man knows would have been able to act as a outfitter and gadget supplier for Peter at this point? I'm going to say Hobie Brown.
Well, the answer was actually staring you right in front of the face. It's Mary Jane Watson Parker.
Oh. I would not have guessed Mary
No, I
Jane.
wouldn't guess that either.
Yep, that was in issue number 434 from May 1st, 1998. Mary Jane signed the Ricochet costume for him.
All right,
All right,
to go.
I guess not the weighted throwing discs that he used.
I guess not. Yeah, those definitely came from elsewhere. I doubt she had anything to do with that. All right.
All right.
Here we go. Finish it out with Independent Post 2000. In the Image comic Savage Dragon, what is the name of Malcolm and Maxine Dragon's oldest daughter?
Yeah, she became a pretty important character eventually. Darn it. Yep, I've never been a reader of Savage Dragon, but I do remember seeing this character featured in some of the solicits and previews. And I think eventually she grew up and joined the Force in Chicago like her dad. Yeah. All right, Malcolm and what's the mother's name again?
Malcolm and Maxine.
Malcolm and Maxine. Okay. Maggie.
Any guesses from the peanut gallery?
Minerva.
None.
Nope. In fact, they completely avoid the M scheme entirely. It's Amy Dragon.
Nope, that's not what I was thinking I had heard or read. So, nope.
All right.
So there you go, Shane Van Dusen. There's two muddles to decorate your study wall with.
Excellent.
And you will soon be enjoying this fabulous hardcover. So, congratulations, Shane.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Not you, Shane. The other Shane.
That's why I'm
Shane,
freaking out now.
Who isn't glitching and turning green?
Wig it out. It's got to be something with the wire, like something.
Well, so during the show, I plugged back in the regular camera, and it did it on both ways. Because the reason I plugged in the regular camera was because if it's going to do it on the computer camera, might as well just plug in the other camera.
Yep. Well, we'll figure it out. Well, that's that with that when it comes to muddling and news. Now, how about we talk about some comics on this Comic Talk?
Actually, before we do, Ian, could I just quickly bring up? I I want to talk just a few minutes about. I finally finished Star Trek: Strange New Worlds.
Oh yeah.
And I especially wanted to talk to Shane about this just briefly. Ian, you watched it as well, correct?
I watched it. Yeah.
Okay.
Sean, did you watch it?
Yes.
Okay. So it's the most.
Are you going to watch it?
What's that?
No. He said yes.
Okay.
For me, it's the most exciting Star Trek I've seen in quite some time.
Yeah.
I wanted to just bring up the season finale because it's a take on one of the greatest original series episodes, which is Balance of Terror.
Agreed.
And I was texting Shane like
spoilers.
I was just so in awe of it, but I really wanted to get your guys' impression. And maybe I'll warm to this in time. I think Kirk is woefully miscast.
I won't disagree with that.
I mean, and let me say this: I don't expect someone to ape William Shatner because you can't.
Mm-hmm.
But like when I watch Chris Pine, he gets the essence of the character. This guy to me was so professional and robotic. There was no swashbuckler at all.
Well,
and I just didn't feel like it was James T. Kirk. I felt like it was a very competent Starfleet captain with no personality, basically.
And this is that timeline's Captain Kirk, meaning you're talking about where Pike survived timeline.
Right.
You're not talking about Kirk in his normal element.
Yeah.
I wonder if the potential is there if he's in next season as what we would expect him to be, or even down the road. Would it be different? I kind of wonder if he wasn't written different because he has to be different.
To be fair to the actor, maybe that's just the way he was directed to play the character. But I was so like this series I think is superb. That the characters are so well realized, and I was so in awe of what they did in this finale. But I was like, that's not Kirk.
No, and I
it's
think
not Kirk at all. Like
he was extremely militaristic.
Oh God,
and that's the point. He had to be for that because Pike was.
You had is that his brother George?
Yeah.
Okay. You had George kind of explain to the audience. Well, this is what Kirk is really like because the actor playing Kirk was not acting that way at all.
Well,
really,
and it's funny too because in the original series, George was just played by William Shatner with a mustache because he was just lying on the floor.
Right.
So that's what they had as Kirk's brother that one time. So it's funny to see him now actually show up multiple times, played by somebody different. But yeah, we're going to get a very different Kirk, I think, in the series itself, because he is going to be in season 2. That has been announced. And he'll be, on the bridge crew, obviously not as captain, but he'll be at his beginnings with the Enterprise.
Well, it's a minor. I mean, I love this show. And what I also, as a contrast, so Gregory Peck's grandson, who plays Spock,
yes.
What I love about his performance, he's not trying to imitate Leonard Nimoy, but he's Spock.
Yes.
Yeah. Like the essence of the character is there. And just like with Uhuru, the essence of the character is there. Yeah. With the Kirk character, I was like, that's not Kirk.
Yeah.
That's not Kirk at all in any way, shape, or form.
Quinto got it so well in a very different way.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And Peck has grown into the role because I actually didn't like him that much on Discovery, to be honest with you. I haven't
watched Discovery yet, so I don't have an opinion on that.
Yeah,
there's some good and bad in that.
But
it comes and goes.
This show for me was almost pitch perfect. I really loved it.
What I will say about this most recent season of Discovery, like now that we're like full-fledged where we are with the series, I'm not going to spoil anything. All I'm going to say is this last season of Discovery, I'm halfway through it, is easily the best season of Discovery, period. Because I feel like they finally found their balance.
Yeah, and they're free to do what they want now, even more so than before. I mean, they did some great stories early on. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy a lot of the series, but they really are free to just do whatever now.
Yeah. Sean, do you have thoughts on Strange New Worlds?
I think one of the things I totally agree with the comments on Kirk. I mean, the only thing was I was surprised that they cast him. Which I shouldn't have been with everything else that Paramount Plus has been doing, especially when I think that all bets were off when they cast Spock. I was like, okay, they're opening up that doorway back in Discovery. But I think one of the things that has me hopeful is exactly what you've been talking about, the evolution of characters. We saw that great evolution of Spock. We saw the great evolution of Pike. I think as this show progresses, I'm hoping we get the same thing with this Kirk.
I hope you're right. Yep.
because I want to see it too. So I'm with you. I'm tentative on it. I'm like, please make me a believer. They did with Spock. So I think that's why I'm hopeful, because a Spock, it took me time to get there. And I think if they can do the same thing with Kirk, it'll be a victory. Well, I'll look back on the initial introduction and my initial feelings on the character and feel very different about it if it's a larger story that's being told here.
And Chris, I can't stress enough to go back and watch, and you don't really need to watch season 1 of Discovery to watch season 2.
Yeah.
It helps in some ways, but they really have a good clean break. And I think they even
I'll watch
kind of touch on it in the beginning of the second season. But really the whole crux of season 2 is that Anson Mount as Pike comes on Discovery.
Right. I knew that. Yeah.
And I enjoyed that enough.
He's sensational in that role. He is sensational.
I was excited for what was going to come with Strange New Worlds. But when you get to the Strange New Worlds first episode and you're towards the end and it's after they're discussing everything that's going on the planet, there's the one scene where he beams down and goes, hi. And from that moment on, I was extremely sold on it because he comes through so genuine with his performance and the whole monologue he has after he comes down to talk to them is just superb.
Well, what I love about his performance is that they consciously establish even before Kirk appears that he is not Kirk. He's a very different captain with a very different style of command, and he's a very different person. And he's so likable, and warm, and you're rooting for him. You understand why his crew is so loyal to him. And what makes that finale so powerful is that you're like, he's not the right captain for this mission. Like you need what made it so powerful, especially go back to the original 60s episode Balance of Terror. Like Kirk is the greatest captain in the history of Starfleet, basically. Yeah. So you needed him to be there to wage that decisive battle against the Romulans, which, Pike is probably in many ways a better diplomat. And he's someone who, in many ways, is probably more, maybe a little more humanistic and approachable. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of the episodes we watched, like that approach was perfect. But you're dealing with a war with an absolutely ruthless enemy. He was not the right captain for that situation. And then I thought they captured that so well. It was such a well-written episode. It dovetailed so nicely with the original episode that we know from the 60s. I'm just in awe of this show.
But you're also talking about a Pike that wasn't groomed into that role at that time because it was Pike getting thrust into that alternate reality sort of. So he wouldn't be what he should have been through that reality because he jumped into it from somewhere else.
Good point. It's magnificent. And I appreciate the indulgence with this, gentleman. The last thing I'll say, especially for Shane's sake, I went back, I do this a couple times a year. I watch the first 6 episodes of the 6th season of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. There is simply nothing better. Period.
Oh yeah, well,
nothing better.
Deep Space Nine's phenomenal.
There's apparently a new comic out that's been getting.
I got to get it.
I've got to find that. I was just told about that last night.
I got to get it
by
too.
Peter.
Yep.
I can't even imagine that I missed it.
Yep.
I missed it too. Yep, I got to get it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah. I will also point out at episode 209, which was affectionately titled "Avoid the Beep Beep Chair" of comic timing. Myself and Chris Nautis had a long conversation on Strange New Worlds and that episode in particular. So anybody who wants to check that out for further discussion, that is a good place to do so. All right, let's get into some comics conversation here. And how about we start guest first? Sean, what you been reading lately?
So last night I read this. I went back to like my pull list and piles of stuff that I haven't read in the longest time. And this one's from 2013. So I've been watching The Last of Us TV series. And Dark Horse did Last of Us American Dreams.
Oh, cool.
And I played the game back then, loved the first game. I don't know why I picked this up and never read it. It's just something that I never got to. So my wife and I have gotten very into the TV show. She's not a gamer. The TV show's been we've become destination television for us, which I can't say that for a lot of shows. And So last night I just was really excited after we ended up one day late watching the most recent episode. I picked up American Dreams and started reading it before going to sleep with the intention of I'm going to read probably the first issue and go to sleep. I read all 4 issues and plowed through it because I just was very, very into the story. I'm not going to spoil too much other than to say it's about Ellie and her best friend Riley, which isn't a shock. They're on the cover. They're 2 16-year-olds navigating this world. I think the hook in it, and it's why I want to point it out. If you're enjoying the TV series, it predates the TV series in the age of the characters. So it's 16-year-olds not only dealing with a world that has the threat of zombie-like clickers, but how do you make decisions about life when your future path is not college or career, but whose fight you're going to join? And that's the crux of the series. And I just was really drawn in. I read it's written by Neil Druckmann, who is one of the creators of not only the game, but is one of the writers on the TV series as well. And it was really great. It was just a great 4-issue read. It was tight. I really enjoyed the story, loved hanging with the characters. And it's very accessible. You don't need to know anything to enjoy this as a 4-issue series. There's no pre-knowledge of anything. It was just fun. It was really great. And the artwork was terrific. I really, really enjoyed it.
Okay. Yeah. I've been thinking about watching Last of Us. I've never played the games. But I know you don't necessarily have to have played the games in order to enjoy the series. So I just have to be in the right mood too, because I haven't really been in the mood for a post-apocalyptic lately. But once I'm feeling in the right mood for all that death, I will sure get right on.
Yeah.
You're gonna get in your happy place for some death.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm still high on House of Mouse happiness. I'm not really ready for a post-apocalyptic anything.
But I've heard that second episode of the series is supposed to be. Was that the one with Nick Offerman, or was it the third one?
Third one.
Oh, okay. That's supposed to be one of the best hours of television that's happened in the last 20 years. So I will get to it at some point, definitely. Yep.
Yeah, and I will say for anybody, if you haven't played the games, you don't need to. My wife doesn't. My wife's not a gamer, so she's totally coming into. So she's a much better measuring stick than I am on whether or not it's accessible. She loves the show. Is not going to pick up a controller and start playing the game.
Nice. Anything else at the top of your list?
I just read Flash 1 Minute War, the special. And I'm ready for a new Flash event. It's something that has always been the draw for Flash for me. It's get me excited for these characters. It's going to be like this. It looks like it's going to be this time spanning event. It's introducing some new villain concepts, but just as important is expanding the lore of what the future looks like for the Flash family, which gets me really excited. They're playing with the toys. It's what I really loved about the Mark Waid and Jeff Johns runs, and this feels like it's going to have that flavor. So as a kickoff to this event, I'm optimistically really excited about it. So I'm at that time where I'm really looking forward to something Flash that just, gets me going. I love these characters. And
and Jeremy Adams has just been doing such a good job.
Mm-hmm.
With the Flash characters. The book, I mean, I enjoyed the book before this, but it's just it's a whole there's energy to it again that I feel hasn't been there 100% in years, and it's my type of Flash. It's like Mark Waid level Flash, at least when it comes to the Flash family and the type of stories that are being told.
It's fun. Yeah. And it's a word that kind of has become a throwaway word, but when it's the Flash, I want the book to be fun. Yes. This was fun. And fun doesn't mean that there isn't a threat. It doesn't mean that there isn't danger. It doesn't mean there aren't thrills, but there's got to be a fun factor. I really like these characters, and that's an important part of the story is I didn't lose that in the creation of villains.
Yeah. Yep. Nice. All right. I'm going to throw in some stuff that I've been reading lately. One thing in particular that I have right here, which is honestly just pretty damn cool that it even exists. I got this in the mail a couple of months back, and I finally got to it. This is Microface. It's an NPR Planet Money comic.
Huh. Looks like it's right out of 1987.
and it is actually a public domain character that existed, that NPR, Planet Money essentially got the rights to by making a version of it that was different enough for them to be able to get the official rights to, but still stem upon the original creation of the character itself. And I'll read from the back of the book here, just as an example. Microface debuted in Clue Comics #1 from Hillman Periodicals in 1942, going on to appear 9 more times in the next 4.5 years. His first adventure, along with most of the ones that followed, were drawn and probably written, but credits were spotty in those days. See our Shazam spotlights for that. Credits were spotty in those days, but it was more than likely New York City-based artist Alan Ulmer who was the creator and writer and artist of that character Microface. According to his daughter Peggy Lokes, the microphone masked Avenger was one of her father's favorite characters. And shortly after creating Microface, Ulmer went into the army and served during World War II. He ultimately left comics forever during the parent-driven comics backlash and the Comics Code Authority of the 50s. So we move forward. Hillman Periodicals never renewed the copyright of Microface. Character fell into public domain in the 70s. Then Planet Money came across Microface in 2019, right around the time Avengers Endgame was breaking all kinds of box office records. And their podcast is set on a quest to buy a real vintage superhero, to actually own the intellectual property as a way to understand the modern IP. Nobody would sell because anything could be gold these days. So they weren't going to officially get the rights to something that was actually owned by somebody. But then they went and found this audio-based character, a sonic superhero who fights criminals by creatively broadcasting his voice from 1942 in the public domain, and they went ahead and made a comic about it. And it's written by who's the writer on it? I forgot the name of the guy off the top of my head already, even though I just had it. But it's drawn by Jamal Igle. Yeah, and Alex Segura did the story behind it.
Oh, nice.
With Ellie Wright and Taylor Esposito, and the cover, the awesome cover that I'll share again here, and the character design, because they had to make a character design that was different enough for it to be their own, even though it existed in the public domain, so that they could own the rights to NPR's Microface. That's a Jerry Ordway creation right there.
Huh. Wow.
He drew the cover and he created the costume, and then from there, Jamal did the interiors.
Oh, fantastic!
Wow.
And it's a really cool comic. It's the whole story here is that somebody is buying up all this intellectual property for these old companies, and I believe they're called Golden Age liquidation, which is hilarious. And we find out that they're doing so in order to get the rights to all of these Golden Age heroes, weaponry that were all under this one company that was owned by the original Microface. And they can't find the Microface costume because he sent it to his grandson, and then his grandson becomes the new Microface, and then we go from there. So it's a really cool concept, and it's available. I'm pretty sure you can also buy it online, but I bought this directly from NPR's website when I heard about it, and it's super cool.
I love the whole idea. Fabulous.
Yeah, and just going into the public domain like that and finding a character that quite literally suits NPR better than any character possibly could. And the grandson, of course, shockingly, is a reporter for NPR. So
I just love how the Golden Age can still surprise us.
Sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's the mysterious Microface from NPR Planet Money Comics Group.
You had me at the creative team for this.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
It's
Extra Jamal Igle artwork there. You kind of buried the lead with that one.
I was waiting for it, honestly, because it's honestly the star is the concept, and then the artwork is just as damn pretty as it always is out of Jamal. So that's it's great stuff. Do track it down if you can. It's well worth your time. I've also been reading, since there's going to be, best of lists and stuff like that, I've been going back in the 2022's catalog a little bit. And I found there was a Thing miniseries that started in 2021 that ended in 2022. I haven't made any of my choices yet, but this may very well wind up being on my list because this is some of the best Thing comic books that I have read since Dan Slott's run. It's a 6-issue miniseries that came out. Trying to find the actual full list of creators on it, but basically, it's set where at some point the Thing got cursed, and because of that, his life is going to crap. Alicia leaves him. Gives the ring back, she wants to have her space. He winds up accidentally damaging public property, and in the process winds up getting arrested and in prison with, of all people, Hercules in the same cell. They try to break themselves out. All while we try to figure out why he's been cursed, what cursed him, and how he's going to wind up getting out of this. And it's written by Walter Mosley with pencils by Tom Riley, and Tom Riley draws a great.
Oh, he's a great artist.
It's almost Silver Age in execution with a modern flair that just works beautifully. So yeah, really, really enjoying that. And depending on what I think about it, it may very well wind up being on my list, but. The Thing by Walter Mosley and Tom Riley, well worth your time. And the other thing that I checked out, I've been going back and I've been reading all the X-Men stuff from the beginning of Hickman's run, like issue by issue by issue, and I just got to the issue with the octogenarians who try to steal plants.
That's right. Yeah.
From
the horticulture.
Yes, the horticulture. Yeah, that is such a fantastic and fun and silly and ridiculous premise that I was so there for it. It's just these 4 women who decide to go into business on their own and try to steal the magic plants that are growing in the Savage Land that belong to Krakoa. In order to profit off of it, because they feel like they're not going to make any profits as makeup salesmen or anything like that anymore, because of all this magic stuff that Krakoa is growing. So yeah, they go into business on their own. They're octogenarians, and they are insane.
Worthy of Morrison's Doom Patrol.
Very much so. Yeah, having a great time going back and reading this stuff again. It's.
I've been reading those in the collected editions, the Dawn of X, the Reign of X, those collections that they've been doing. They've done a really great job of collecting all of that.
They have.
It's something where I've got obviously doing a DC show. I sometimes I get behind on some of my Marvel stuff, and those collections have been really, really nice for the way that I end up reading it, being able to just gradually keep up with the run. It's a great run.
It is. Yep, it really is. And I got one more thing, and this was gifted to me a little while back. I think it was might have even been a Secret Santa gift, but I got William Shakespeare's Avengers: The Complete Works. It's illustrated by Danny Schlitz, and it assemble ye Avengers. What is the most cinematic franchise of all time had been penned by the greatest playwright of all time? Wonder no more. In William Shakespeare's Avengers, the best-selling author of the William Shakespeare Star Wars series has reimagined the Avengers films as plays penned by the Bard himself, including Assemble Ye Avengers, Lo, the Age of Ultron, Infinity War's Tale, and the End Game's Afoot. And it's hilarious. They like the interiors have some, it's absolutely what you would expect from a play setup with some great illustrations thrown in there for good measure. I just happened to turn to a page involving T'Challa, which I'm just going to read off real quick. When we were by the wide world undisturbed, a nation self-sufficient and alone, know we then unrestrained simplicity and did not try to meddle past our borders. Now we upon the world stage have appeared, declaring both our might and independence, astounding all who once assumed us weak. You can't get better than that. I'm so happy to know that William Shakespeare wrote the Avengers.
Somewhere in the multiverse.
Yeah.
Circa 1602, probably.
Yep.
There you go. So yeah, Avengers, William Shakespeare's Avengers, the complete works, written by Ian Dosher with illustrations by Danny Schlitz. It's hilarious, and I'm glad I own it. Shane, what do you got for us?
I really haven't read much of anything. It's been long hours at work and trying to catch up on some TV shows, and that's not being very successful either, and then falling asleep.
That's fair.
So the last couple of weeks have not been kind to reading.
Any new toy purchases in note?
I did get the G.I. Joe Sky Striker in, so I have to tear that apart and see how to put that back together. That's the HasLab one, and I was at the time that was announced, I was excited. I was looking for a vintage Sky Striker to buy and do something with, and then they announced this, so I just went with this because it was a little bit more expensive than what I would have cared to spend, but it's new plastic, new stickers, new this, new that. It's not going to fall apart. I don't have to be quite as ginger with it. It comes with a great display piece that you can mount it on. So,
and it has Ace. Does it have Ace with it?
It has Ace. It has a co-pilot. Oh gosh, I forget his code name. That was always featured on the artwork of the box, but they actually created the figure now for it. It comes with a Scarlet in a pilot outfit.
Wow.
A Night Force ripcord, and then 3 Cobra Commander with an aired Mickey Mouse kind of Cobra symbol, which is infamously famous. A Cobra Trooper and a Cobra flight guy,
this all comes with a Sky Striker?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then it came with regular decals, Tomcat F-14 decals, Cobra decals, a stand, all kinds of missiles, blast effects, rocket effect. It's impressive.
Sounds impressive.
Yeah.
Whew. How big is that thing?
It is close to the original Sky Striker, so it's 3 3/4 inch size figures.
Okay.
It's probably about yay long.
Are the figures as big as the ones that you've been buying in the new line?
No. These are classic O-ring design.
Okay, gotcha.
On classic looking old card backs.
Gotcha.
It's impressively done.
Okay.
The big difference is that they actually got Gromit's F-14 Tomcat copyright. So the jet is an F-14 Tomcat.
Wow.
Nice.
It's neat.
Murd, what about you?
Well, I just got my DCBS box in this weekend, a couple of days ago, and the only thing I plucked out of it that I thought would be worthy of discussion in this episode was this.
Yes!
Ian, have you gotten a chance to look at Darkwing Duck #1 from Dynamite?
Not yet, but it's happening soon, and I hope it lives up to expectations.
Well, it gets off to a fairly slow start. I mean, the first issue is called The Dark Flight Returns, just kind of an arbitrary pun title. It's written by Amanda Diebert with art and color by Carlo Lauro, because apparently some of the best Disney comic artists of our generation are coming out of Europe and Italy in particular. So yeah, it's kind of a by-the-numbers Darkwing Duck story. St. Canard is dedicating a statue in Darkwing Duck's honor when Megavolt shows up to crash the dedication, and he's got some kind of new electrical technology that allows him to enslave most of the members of the crowd, except for Darkwing, Launchpad, and Goslin and Honker. And then just action sequences ensues that allows Darkwing to break the crowd free of Megavolt's control. So yeah, yada yada, ABC, done. But most of the characters' voices sounded as they should. That the characterizations were on point. The script was fairly strong, and it carried a strong anti-cell phone message, and we got to see Little Honker playing an electric concertina. Let me just find that image in here. Yeah, there we go.
Nice.
Gosselin doing her Billie Eilish impression there.
Oh my god.
So yeah, there's some topical references in here. It's just kind of a by the numbers, fairly generic Darkwing Duck strip just to get things started. And issue number 2 is going to have a Quackerjack story.
Ooh.
Just work our way through the fearsome 5.
Does there appear to be a running storyline of any kind, or are these just going to be one and dones from the looks of it?
This first one is definitely a one and done. Just the starting gate. There may be subplots developing eventually, but that's not the indication here with the first issue.
All right, cool. Yeah. I'm glad that it was just as much Darkwing as we could possibly take for a first issue.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to measure up to the last Darkwing series we saw from Boom. I think there was some more involvement from people who actually made the cartoon.
I think you're right about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's nothing against the creative team here. They're just kind of doing some fairly safe stuff with the characters to start off with.
Yeah, which is funny because Gargoyles, you're getting the original creator back involved with the Gargoyles series over at Dynamite, but not the same with Darkwing, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So, anything else, or just Darkwing for now?
Just Darkwing for now.
Fair enough. Darkwing Duck. Mr. Ebony.
Just a few things, since we had a comic talk only recently, but first and foremost,
Danger.
It's on my pile.
So Tom King. So right away, I'm going to give it a shot. Magnificent art by Jorge. I'm going to probably mispronounce the name. I apologize. Fornes. Dave Stewart coloring. Clayton Cowles lettering. Murd, was the DC series first issue special? Was that what it was called? Where they introduced new characters?
It was, and this entire series is a self-professed love letter.
Yes.
To that
so
series.
Basically, go back to the Bronze Age, to the first issue special series, and some of them are one-off characters, some of them got series of their own. They're all here.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them were Kirby creations. The Green Team, the Dingbats, Atlas. The Creeper appears, Warlord,
the Metamorpho should be in there.
Metamorpho, the Blue Skin Starman, Lady Cop. And the first issue is, I don't want to give too much away. It's really just establishing what all these characters are doing, where they are at this moment in time. And there is something strange going on. Sort of it seems to be bringing all of them together into this situation. And I want to, is it Dr. Fate's helmet?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Definitely.
So, yeah, there's Dr. Fate's helmet is playing some sort of role in things. I'm being vague on purpose. And also because the first issue is really more of a setup, but the art is beautiful, first of all. But to see all these characters brought to life by Tom King, I mean, some of these are just like these one-off wacky characters from the Bronze Age. And like any great writer, he's mining them and finding he's used them in a way that is compelling and interesting. Like the Green Team are like these, multi-billionaire like financiers, and it's a fascinating first issue. I have no issue 2. I haven't read it yet, but I'm not want to say any more, but it's well worth checking out. You don't need to know a lot about these characters. It's more fun if you do know a little bit about them, just to see them all being brought to life again. But excellent. Really looking forward to seeing where that's going.
Nice.
Dynamite's latest James Bond series is superb. It's just called 007. It's 6 issues. I just finished it. I read them all. I kind of waited and read them all in one sitting, basically. Writers Philip Kennedy Johnson, art by Marco Finnegan, colors Dearbla Kelly, letters Jeff Eckelberry. Superb. It's about Bond dealing with, and another one of the 00s, a woman who kind of mentored him when he was younger, and she seems to have gone off the grid, if possibly even dead. He's trying to find out what's happening, and it ends up in a situation where, a kind of classic Bond, where he is almost on his own, and he's not just has the support of his own government. It's an excellent James Bond story. And actually, the 6-issue storyline is not over. They're going to continue it in a new arc. I think it's called King and Country. Let me double check that.
Okay.
Let's see.
New miniseries, or is it just
another miniseries?
Okay.
I'm failing. I don't have. I want to say it's King and Country, but I'm not positive about that. But if I've raved about the Dynamite's custodianship of the James Bond property. Everything I've read all of it. Most of it has been really well done. This one is especially superb. So if you're a James Bond fan, I highly recommend it. Now, I mentioned this in passing on our last episode.
Yes.
This
Catwoman Lonely City.
This Catwoman Lonely City. Thank you. I keep forgetting I'm on camera. This is phenomenal. This is Cliff Chang writing, drawing, inking, lettering, and coloring. He does everything. This is, without a doubt, one of the best creator OGNs where they do a writer artist that I've read in recent years. Definitely going to be a nominee for me in one of the categories when we do 2022. But it's a DC Black Labels. It's an Elseworld. But it's Catwoman as a 50-year-old woman dealing with the fallout from events 10 years ago when Batman died, Commissioner Gordon died, Nightwing died, and the Joker died. And she's now out of prison, and she's trying to sort of find her feet. And they bring in other characters from the Batman world. We're now all middle-aged people. It is his command of the characters is spot on, and the art. I mean, if you like Cliff Chang, I mean, this is for me, this is probably some of the greatest work of his career. This is consummate Cliff Chang, but he has such a great grasp of the world of Gotham, of the characters, and especially imagine them as older. and you have, all I'll say is you have Harvey Dent as the mayor, and you can imagine where that's going to go.
Oh,
so, there's been a lot of great Batman Elseworlds over the years. I think we can all agree on that. I'm sure all of us have favorites. This is way at the top. This is. And plus the presentation, this is a beautiful hardcover. And I can't, if you're Shane, have you read this yet?
No, I just opened mine yesterday.
Shane, you are going to devour this. I read this in sitting.
Nice.
That's how good this is. So I can't praise this enough. It's so wonderful to see, a top flight creator just holding forth with their vision on a classic, iconic property like Catwoman and the whole Batman universe. Really, it's magnificent. So I can't emphasize that enough. Last thing I want to bring up. So I had the flood over a year ago in my base, which destroyed a lot of my library. I've been slowly rebuilding. I was so thrilled when they reissued the Miller Klaus Jansen Daredevil Omnibus. So I'm sure many of us have read these stories. I mean, these are the foundational stories for Daredevil, that character, in many ways. It's just a thrill to have them back in my library again in a nice omnibus format. And Shane, you know what? It's not that big. So
no, that doesn't look as big as other ones.
Even you might be able to handle this one.
Because it looks about the size of the Hawkman one that DC did. So
it's actually slimmer than that.
It's just that's not a bad size. That's worth it.
Okay.
So that's all I got this week, guys. I haven't read that much in the past week or so.
No, but still, that's
actually. Cool. I'm sorry. One more thing, just to mention. Yeah. So I read Human Target 11.
Yes.
God, I don't have it down here with me, but the art by Smallwood is so breathtaking and cinematic in scope at this point, but yet so intimate at the same time. I mean, if you don't fall in love with Ice after you read these stories, but also fear her at the same time, it's magnificent noir. It is without question for me the best comic book series of the past year, hands down. And I just hit my phone by accident. Sorry. So just wanted to. I can't wait for issue 12, which will be coming out soon. That'll end the series. So that'll be on my 2023 nominations when Murd does it next year.
Pays to think ahead.
Yes, clearly. Has anybody checked out Velma?
No, not yet.
I saw bits and pieces. I saw bits and pieces of the first episode.
Okay, I can understand why you may not have. Sean, have you checked it out?
My wife and I watched the first 3 episodes.
Okay, what'd you think?
So I didn't walk in knowing about the controversy.
Okay.
So I watched it like out of the gate, not so. We watched it clean and we liked it.
Mhm.
It's not one of those like we usually typically like, the half-hour sitcoms, things like that. Usually the ones that are irreverent and things like that tend to be things that it's kind of like a palate cleanser after especially after watching something like Last of Us or something like that. Like let's laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
We enjoyed it. And so far we're 3 episodes in. We're making it through slowly. Are we going to finish watching the whole thing? I don't know. And that's not a negative with it. I like it. I'm watching a lot of shows right now. It'll be interesting to see if it pulls me back in to watch the rest of it. So that's kind of my quick take on it.
Ian, what is the controversy? I'm not familiar with this.
So this is a very, 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 very different take on Velma.
Yes, it is.
Well, I got that from what I saw. Yeah.
I mean, the controversy basically is that it's not really Scooby-Doo. That it's a Mindy Kaling vehicle that feels like a Mindy Kaling vehicle that happens to be called Scooby-Doo. It happens to be.
But Scooby-Doo's not even in it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I still feel like in some ways they may have been better off just having these all be analogs and just not, avoid the controversy by having them be like the characters of Scooby-Doo, but not actually be the characters, which essentially that is what they are. Like Shaggy is not even called Shaggy, he's called Norville because that's his real name. Mm-hmm. And he's black on the show. Mindy Kaling is voicing Velma. Velma is of Indian descent. There is no Scooby-Doo. Fred is very, very much a
wealthy white douchebag.
Yes, a wealthy white douchebag, and not a guy who's obsessed with traps.
All right, let me, if I may start. So basically, what you're saying is we have another one of these manufactured culture war issues that obfuscate real problems in our country.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Now, what I will say is that I've divorced myself from the quote unquote controversy enough to actually really enjoy the show for the most part. I think that there's an interesting mystery going on. I've laughed a decent amount of times. It actually reminds me in some ways of Venture Brothers, in personality. Only
animation style is not too far off either.
Yes, animation style is not too far off. It's more mature than Venture Brothers, but also it reminds me of Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn's a better show. I will straight up say that, but you can tell that that's the vibe that they were going for with this. Yep. And anybody who was going in expecting this to just be the origin of Velma, your favorite Scooby-Doo character, shockingly is going to be disappointed because that's not what it is. But for what it is, I've enjoyed it. And there's only 2 episodes left to come out. They'll come out, I believe, if not tomorrow, then the day after. I forget what day they release, whether it's Wednesday or Thursdays. But I'm up to date, and it's actually pretty decent. Whether or not they're going to introduce Scooby-Doo on the show, I don't even really care, because to me, I can go watch Scooby-Doo whenever I want, but also I could go watch Velma. That's fine.
That's a good way to put it. I like her sense of humor. I enjoyed her show, The Mindy Project.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's the same way of looking at it. We've just had an entire episode basically about how, well, Matt Reeves has his Batman, but there's going to be a Brave and the Bold. Like, okay, they can both coexist. They can be their own things. That's perfectly fine. Scooby-Doo can do the same damn thing. So
it's not that important anyway.
I know. Exactly. There's more important things in the world to worry about.
Well, they try to make it seem like these are the most important things to distract people, but
a much less controversial show, in fact, not controversial at all, that I will mention, just because it's animated and it's awesome and it's way deeper than I ever expected it to be. Has anybody heard of Dogs in Space?
No.
Dogs in Space is a Netflix show. That is exactly what it says on the tin. It's dogs in space. That the Earth is going to crap, and a whole bunch of scientists give intelligence to a bunch of their dogs, and have them go off into space to try to find a new home for the human race. And
it's kind of like the DC concept, the Space Canine Patrol Agents.
Yes, actually, you're right. And it's way deeper than you would think. Like, because they go into the fact that that these dogs are away from those they love in order to try and give them a second chance, and there's some more complex storylines than you would expect from a show like this going on. It would easily fit right at home on Cartoon Network if it was there, like right in with like the Adventure Times and Steven Universes of the world. It's just their dogs, and an excellent voice cast. Haley Joel Osment is the voice of Garbage on the show. He's the ship's captain. Sarah Chalk plays a character. Chris Parnell, John DiMaggio, Michael Dorn is one of the he's Pistachio Soup, one of the members of the Dog Council. Will Wheaton's a character on the show. It's nerd royalty in a lot of roles in this. But it's a heck of a lot of fun, and it's a great way to unwind by just watching dogs try to save the human race. So yeah, Dogs in Space on Netflix if you want to try to check it out.
I'll take a look.
Yeah, good stuff. Anything else, gentlemen?
Can I show one more comic?
Yeah, sure.
Please. Absolutely.
This one I've actually been making my way through over the last month. So I'm a big time Disney junkie. I've always loved the animation. Mm-hmm. Comics have been, I don't want to, not hit or miss. It's more of I just never have gotten to them. I read The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, loved it. Mm-hmm. I've read some of the more recent, like I grabbed Darkwing Duck, read and enjoyed that. But I've gotten into class comic history in general, and don't always get a chance to read as much as I'd like, but Fantagraphics published the original Mickey Mouse comic strips from the 1930s, and these were all done by Floyd Gottfredson, and I'd never read any of these. I picked up the first one. It's called Race to Death Valley, and it's available digitally. You can still get the hardcovers of them. I believe you can still get the hardcovers of them. I'm currently reading it on Comixology. I'm really enjoying this. It's broken up there. So the long form stories, it's not just like quick hit comic strips. The stories are actually these big, long adventure stories. Mickey has a lot of the traits that we're used to for traditional Mickey traits, but it's also not. Over the years, he became like more of this watered down, clean version of Mickey because of the fact that he became such a cultural icon. Well, this addresses the fact that early on, he had these adventures where a lot of the traits that you now associate with Donald Duck and with Goofy were really in Mickey's wheelhouse. They're big adventure stories. The book itself is broken up into arcs, and the arcs are, based on, and each arc has like a little historical context to it, which is really nice. So I'm really enjoying seeing like the forefathers of a lot of, the books that we've read throughout our lives. They were reading books like this, and I'm really enjoying it. It feels like something very different from what I'm currently reading. It's fun, but there's a lot of depth to it. And I want to be clear when I'm saying it's fun. That doesn't mean there's not substance. Right. There's a lot of content, a lot of text, a lot that keeps pulling me back in. Just when I think I'm like, oh, I've read a lot of this right now, I keep going back and reading more adventures. I've since picked up the next 3 volumes just because I'm enjoying this so much. I know I'm going to gradually keep reading it. I find that I read arcs in like sittings. So, I might spend 2 or 3 days making it through an arc. Then I'll step away and go read, my wealth of other stuff. And I keep coming back to it. So I want to recommend it for anybody that's interested in comic history or just interested in fun stories that feel very different than anything that we're currently reading. It surprised me on how much I'm really enjoying it. And it's got a lot of the flavor of the early animation, which I'm a big fan of. So it's a recommendation for people looking for something different and interested in history.
Love the tip. Well done, sir.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, and I feel like a lot of people forget that there even were Mickey Mouse strips of this sort, because he's become the mascot more than anything else. I mean, I know there's like children's cartoons today that younger kids today probably know him more for that than anything else. But yeah, there's a wealth of history to Mickey that has just gone completely forgotten by most human beings. And now Steamboat Willie is public domain. And let's see what happens with that. Awesome. Thanks for bringing it up, Sean.
Yes, thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Reminding us of Mickey's chaotic free-range riding past.
Absolutely. All right, I think that's a bold shot, gentlemen.
Bold shot.
Fantastic.
Sean, so glad you came on. Wonderful.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely our pleasure, my friend. It's been way too long, and thank you so much for popping on. Let everybody know where they could find your works.
So ragingbullets.com is our website. It's one of the easiest ways to find me. And periodically I guest star on Is It Jaws, where we talk about films. So it's two different podcasts you can find me on. But honestly, guys, this has been an honor. It's without Comic Geek Speak, I wouldn't be podcasting. And it's always a pleasure to be able to come back and talk to you guys and hang out with you. So thank you for inviting me for this.
Absolutely our pleasure. And it's like old times, my friend. It's like old times.
Been way too long. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right. Before we wrap things up, one more reminder from you, Murd, on the best of 2022.
Check the Comic Geek Speak supergroup on Facebook, or the forums, or the YouTube rules page, or wherever, and check out the different nomination categories, and get your ballots in to bestof@comicgeekspeak.com by midnight on Sunday, March 5th, Eastern Standard Time.
Fantastic. And one more thank you out there to everybody who donates to us over at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. We wouldn't be able to do this show without your support, so we thank you so much for that. And if anybody wants to throw me a bone over at patreon.com/comictiming, feel free for the production and other podcasts that might come out. I greatly appreciate that. And now, the role of Shane shall be played by Shane.
As long as I don't go wiggy. All righty. Visit us at comicgeekspeak.com to send us an email. The address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave us a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642. Stop by thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com. Find us on YouTube at youtube.com/comicgeekspeak. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, send in your Muddle the Murd so we can have a backlog of those to go through. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
Forsooth, Hulk doth wanteth to be alone.